Bear down. Dio Odeyingbo, $48 million. A starter's contract. And right now, in the middle of minicamp, he is not starting. Worse than that, Austin Booker earned that spot with a sack that knocked Jordan Love out of a playoff game. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you exactly why handing that job back to Odeyingbo in Week 1 might be the most expensive mistake Ryan Poles has made since he walked through the doors of Hollis Hall. But that is not the only fire burning on the north side. Right now, Jedrick Wills, former top 10 overall pick, came in promising to push for the left tackle job protecting Caleb Williams, and today he is repping with the third unit, not the second, the third. And in a second, I'm going to show you why that number is not a footnote. It is a 5-alarm warning about what happens to this offensive line if Braxton Jones goes down. And to close it out, Fansided dropped a take this week saying the Bears are moving Cole KMET before the season. Spoiler, they are dead wrong. I have 3 arguments backed by real formation usage numbers that prove it. But those come later, because first, you need to understand why the Odeyingbo situation is a lot more dangerous than anyone in the Windy City is willing to say out loud. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk about the most dangerous time bomb hiding on this Bears roster. It's not the left tackle, though that's also on fire. It's not the run defense, though that's a real problem too. The most dangerous time bomb is the question of who is going to be the starting right defensive end when the regular season begins. And that question has a name: Dio Odeyingbo. Let me give you the full context, because this story has layers that most people aren't analyzing correctly, and that frustrates me. Odeyingbo lands in Chicago in the 2025 offseason. Ryan Poles signs him to 3 years and $48 million, with $32 million guaranteed. That is not a rotational player deal. That is not a third option deal. That is a starter contract. Poles was betting that Odeyingbo was going to be the piece that completed the pass rush next to Montez Sweat, a force on either side who could set the edge, stop the run, and hunt quarterbacks when the game demanded it. The reality of 2025 was a disaster of historic proportions. 8 games, 1 sack, 6 SIX, total pressures all year. And then in Week 9, the Achilles went. Season over. And the most brutally honest number you can process right now is this. In the last 18 games Odeyingbo played, combining his final games in Indianapolis and his 8 in Chicago, the pass rush was practically non-existent. Odeyingbo came to market riding the glory tape from 20 to 23, when he had 8 sacks with the Colts. That tape, that 2023 Dio, never showed up. And now he's coming back, 7.5 months after an Achilles rupture, which is, we have to say this out loud, his second significant injury of that nature in 5 years. This isn't his first rodeo with that recovery, but something shifted during this offseason that the Bear Digest piece captures perfectly. Odeyingbo participated in padless team scrimmages during OTAs, and when the season ended, that seemed practically impossible at this pace. He's ahead of schedule. The Bears are speaking positively. Ben Johnson said during OTAs that Odeyingbo is tracking well. Okay, now let's get to the heart of the matter, because here's the real problem that nobody wants to name directly. Austin Booker earned that job, not with press conferences, not with projections, with real football, with real sacks, with a tackle that gave Jordan Love a concussion in January. Booker played 10 games in 2025, after missing the first 7 with a knee injury in the preseason. In those 10 games, the Bears saw the player they thought Odeyingbo was going to be. 4.5 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, 5 tackles for loss, a forced fumble. And what matters most to me tactically, 29% of all Bears pressures when he was on the field, according to the numbers Dan Pizzuto laid out on the Mina Kimes show. Montez Sweat had 28.9% of the team's total pressures for the whole year. Booker nearly matched him in less than half the games. Think about what that means. The Bears were 31st in pass rush win rate in 2025, at 29%. That is almost historically bad. Sweat had to carry that weight almost alone. And when Booker stepped on the field, the numbers improved in a measurable way. Booker was the second most productive pressure generator on this team, not Odeyingbo, Booker. So the SI.com piece by Gene Chamberlain frames it exactly right. And I think this is precisely the right flashpoint. What happens if Odeyingbo arrives at training camp and the medical staff clears him completely? Because Poles didn't pay $16 million per year in cap hit to have him as a third down specialist. Odeyingbo has to start if he's healthy. That's what the contract demands. That's the commitment. So, where does Booker go? Look, I could be wrong about this, and maybe Dennis Allen's staff is smart enough to handle this creatively, keep Booker as a co-starter, split snaps intelligently, but I'm not convinced. Because in the NFL, when you have a guy making $16 million a year, you don't sit him in neutral situations. You play him. You use him on first and second down. You need him on the field constantly to justify that contract. And here's my position, direct and unfiltered. Dio Odeyingbo should not be the starter when the season begins. Not out of disrespect for his talent, because The evidence of what we saw in 2025, plus the medical reality of coming back from an Achilles rupture in under 12 months, plus the fact that this is his second rupture of this type, all of that tells me Booker should start while Odeyingbo builds confidence. There's enormous precedent for this. Most edge rushers returning from Achilles ruptures don't fully recover their form until the year after their return. Not the comeback season, the year after. If Odeyingbo plays in 2026 and puts up 5 sacks in 12 games while adjusting, that's actually a success story. But if they make him a week 1 starter and demand he set the edge in the run game on first down and generate pressure on second, and his body isn't ready yet, you create a cascade failure that breaks Allen's entire defensive scheme. And Allen's defensive scheme depends on stopping the run first. The Bears were 29th in yards allowed per carry in 2025. That's what killed them. Not just the lack of pass rush, though that was terrible too. It was the inability to force opponents into predictable passing situations because teams just ran the ball on them with impunity. Devin Bush comes from Cleveland, where he was excellent stopping the run, but as the article correctly notes, Bush played behind a defensive line with Myles Garrett, drawing double teams constantly. Without that distraction, how does Bush perform in Chicago? We don't know yet. The point is this. If Odeyingbo cannot be a reliable first and second down player from the start of the season, the defense is going to bleed from the same wounds it bled from in 2025. And that, for a team trying to contend for a Super Bowl with Caleb Williams in year 2, is unacceptable. My final call on this flashpoint? Poles has to resist the pressure to start Odeyingbo purely because of the size of the contract. The contract is already signed. The money is already committed. Booker earned that spot. The correct decision to win games in 2026 is to start Booker, develop Odeyingbo gradually, and evaluate mid-season whether the rotation needs to change based on what both show in pads during training camp and the preseason. That's not punishing Odeyingbo. That's making the right call for the football team instead of the call that makes the front office look good. The question I need you to answer in the comments right now is this. Do you start Odeyingbo from week 1 because that's what the contract justifies? Or do you let Booker keep the job he earned? Drop it below? All right, but wait, because what I'm about to tell you is a management error that could cost Caleb Williams the best blindside protection of his career. And it's happening right now at Hollis Hall without almost anybody calling it what it really is. Let me talk about something that is happening quietly and has enormous consequences for the protection of the most valuable quarterback on this franchise. The left tackle situation for the Chicago Bears is a story of 2 colliding narratives, renewed hope with Braxton Jones and total failure with Jedrick Wills, and I need you to understand why the second part worries me just as much as the first part excites me. Start with the context. The Bears lost Ozzie Trapilo in the January playoffs with a patellar tendon rupture. That's a season-ending injury that can take a player away for the entire following year, potentially longer. Trapilo had been their best offensive line story after ascending to starter in Week 12. Gone in his best moment. Then Drew Dahlman retired. So the Bears entered 2026 without their 2025 center and without their emerging right tackle. Real holes in this line. Poles' solution was to bring back Braxton Jones on a 1-year deal and sign Jedrick Wills as competition. Jones is coming from a season that started rough. He got benched 3 games in and didn't return to the trenches in a meaningful way. But this offseason, he looks different. Johnson and Jonah Jackson have spoken well of his approach and his comfort level with the system. He's taking all the first-team reps. He appears to have a real lead. And then there's Wills. And here's where the story goes bad. Jedrick Wills was the number 10 overall pick in the 2020 draft. Cleveland bet everything on him. Former first-rounder, a guy with real credentials. The Bears brought him in for $1.2 million, a cheap deal with 0 financial risk, as SI.com notes, as legitimate competition for the starting job. The idea was that Wills, who spent all of 2025 away from football recovering from injury, could at least pressure Jones and serve as a reliable backup if Jones stumbled. The problem is what's happening at this minicamp. Wills missed at least 1 practice for an undisclosed reason, and when he came back, according to ESPN's Courtney Cronin's report, he was working with the third-team offense. Not the first team, not the second, the third. In the language of an NFL training camp pecking order, that is almost a definitive verdict. This isn't the Bears giving him time to ease back gradually. This is the offensive line staff, under Dan Rauscher, not trusting that Wills is in any condition to legitimately compete for the job yet. Kieran Amagaji, who also lost 2025 to an elbow injury, is working with the second unit. Right now, the order is Jones, Amagaji, then Wills. Amagaji is above Wills, and here's the real problem that worries me most. It's not that Wills is third right now, it's what happens if Jones fails or gets hurt again. Jones has never completed a full, healthy season. That's not an opinion, that's his medical history. If Jones goes down, who protects Caleb Williams' blind side? Theo Benedette has been working at right tackle with the second unit, so they seem to be positioning him as Darnell Wright's backup. If they urgently need a left tackle, is it Amagaji? Is it Wills if he's healthy enough by then? The article frames it directly and correctly. The real failure in this process isn't that Wills is struggling specifically. It's that the Bears chose Wills when they could have signed someone who would offer better competition and a more reliable backup option. Poles went cheap with Wills, and if that player can't even pressure Jones during the preseason, the backup plan for left tackle is essentially non-existent. Man, what puts me on edge isn't the situation today. It's the situation in Week 7 if Jones tweaks his ankle. Look, Braxton Jones can absolutely have the best season of his career in 2026. I'm not being purely negative about him. But the contingency plan behind Jones right now is so thin, it barely exists. And protecting Caleb Williams, a quarterback in only his second year in a complex system, is the number one priority of this entire roster. Every hit Williams absorbs in the backfield is a hit on his development. The numbers told us that in 2024, 68 impacts that year. With Dahlman gone and Trapilo gone and Jones as the only real answer at left tackle, the margin for error is almost nothing. Poles needs a real plan B for this position if training camp proves Wills can't compete. Not the ghost of Theo Benedette shifting from right tackle to left. A real plan B. All right, fam, I'm going to settle this KMET story in less time than it takes a four-man blitz to reach the quarterback, because the answer is simple, direct, and nobody should be confused about this. Cole Kmet is not going anywhere. Not this year. The beat reporters writing about KMET as the Bears' most valuable trade chip are ignoring basic information that the SI.com article lays out clearly. Fansided dropped a piece this week saying Chicago should and will move Kmet. That drafting Colston Loveland made it obvious the Bears wanted to replace him immediately. That 2025 didn't get it done, but 2026 is the year. That's wrong. Here are 3 reasons Kmet stays fast and direct. First, the usage numbers don't lie. The Bears deployed 2 tight ends on the field 32.64% of snaps last year. That was 6th in the NFL. And they used 3 tight ends 8.52% of the time, 5th in the NFL. And that 13 personnel percentage was climbing as the season went on. Not dropping, climbing. That is not a formation Ben Johnson is walking away from. That is a formation Johnson is expanding in year 2. Putting the entire weight of that second tight end role on a rookie in Sam Roush from day one would be an obvious roster construction mistake for a team trying to win right now. Second, Kmet said it himself. He walked out of his exit meeting with Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles with zero signal that they were moving him. The Bears told him they wanted him back, that he was part of the plan. And Kmet said he believes Poles and Johnson because, in his own words, they're honest guys who say what they mean. A player who thinks he might get traded doesn't say that. A player who knows his coaches want him around says exactly that. Third, Sam Roush needs time. Roush was pick 69 in the 2026 draft, 3rd round. The Bears see him as the long-term complement to Loveland. But you can't open a contention season with 2 young or rookie tight ends carrying a full load in a scheme that thirsts for that formation. Kmet has real value in the system right now, especially in those 13 personnel sets that Johnson keeps growing. Will Kmet eventually leave? Probably. His cap hit climbs toward $15 million in 2027, and he has no more guaranteed money. If training camp shows Roush is ready for a bigger role, if the Bears hit the trade deadline needing picks, that conversation opens up. But moving him now, in June, before training camp, before anyone knows anything about Roush's readiness, is selling a functional asset at clearance sale prices with no reason to do it. Ryan Poles is not that kind of GM. Poles is patient. Poles is methodical. And the information from his own exit meetings with Kmet confirms he has zero intention of moving him before this season. Kmet stays a Bear. And that is the right call for this team in 2026. That's everything I've got today, fam. And of all 3 stories we broke down, the one that's still spinning in my head is Booker versus Odeyingbo, because this isn't a talent versus talent argument. This is a do what's right for the team versus do what makes the front office look good argument. And that difference, that detail of who starts at right defensive end when the regular season kicks off, could be the difference between a defense that takes a genuine step forward in 2026 or a defense that replays the same nightmares from 2025. Austin Booker earned that job in the Windy City in January when it mattered. And if Poles and Dennis Allen take it from him before Odeyingbo proves in training camp that he's actually ready, that is a mistake this fan base will remember. Bear down. Always. If this video gave you something, hit that like, hit subscribe, and drop it in the comments. Who do you start at right defensive end week 1? Booker, who earned it, or Odeyingbo, who costs $16 million a year? I want to read every single one.